He didn't just die, he was murdered. Somebody stabbed him with a knife from that kitchen. And you know who that someone was.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
I got 3 homosexuals in a house, and I got 1 straight guy. What's he doing over there? What is he doing over there? I think we're all drinking wine. You know what's going to happen tonight? You're coming to Jesus tonight.
Reap what you sow. That was the Project Runway episode title on August 2nd, 2006, the same day that Robert Wone was murdered on Swan Street. It's 11:54 p.m. Jeff Baker and Tracy Weaver arrive at Swan Street. Jeff Baker is a seasoned EMS worker for over 10 years, and Tracy Weaver is a seasoned EMS worker for over 15 years. This is very important to note because everything that precedes is extremely odd. Immediately when they arrive, they are approached by a mysterious man in a white bathrobe, screaming, yelling, saying that there's a stabbing on the 2nd floor and that they need help.
Someone was stabbed. They're on our 2nd floor.
Jeffrey Baker tried asking the man what happened, but the guy just breaks down, continues to cry, and isn't being much help. So both Baker and Weaver go into the home to the 2nd floor to try to find the victim. Once they reach the 2nd floor, they meet another guy in a bathrobe. Again, Baker asks the same question, what happened? But this time, the guy looks at Baker, doesn't say anything, and proceeded to go to his room, essentially ignoring both Baker and Weaver. Baker and Weaver then look down the hall and see there's a door that's open. They proceed. They finally find the victim. The victim's body was on a pull-out bed, but they see a third guy. This time, the third guy is not in the bathrobe, but he's in nothing but his underwear. His back is facing towards the door, so both Weaver and Baker can't even see his face. And when Baker asks the same question, what happened, the guy gets up, says, I heard a scream, and doesn't turn around. So we're going to use a lot of visuals. Because how weird this third man is acting, Baker decided to go around the long way in order to keep on watching the third guy in case he does anything crazy as he tries to attend to the victim. Baker noticed that there was 3 giant stab wounds, right? So you would assume that there's a lot of blood. Weaver even mentioned that she could fit 2 of her fingers inside each of the stab wounds. There was little to no blood in the room. Barely any blood on the bed. There was no blood on the floor, no blood on the walls, nowhere. According to Baker, he thought the body looked like it was stabbed, showered, redressed, and then placed onto the bed because how clean the whole room looked and undisheveled it was. Because of the state of the body, Baker quickly tries to find a pulse on his neck, on the victim's wrist, and the victim's femoral artery, and there's nothing. The victim was immediately placed on an EKG monitor in order to track his heart, and it was systole. The victim arrived at George Washington University emergency room and was declared dead at 12:24 a.m.
Lived in the house on Swan Street, know who killed their housemate Robert Wone, but they have not told investigators. Wone was stabbed 3 times, the housemate said.
All right. And, okay, why don't you just start from the very beginning? Let's start from, how do you know Robert?
On July 19th, Robert Wone knew he had an upcoming CLE training in the next 2 weeks. This would pose a problem because Robert Wone worked for Radio Free Asia, which was a nonprofit organization. Basically, on August 2nd, he would still have to go to work. Then right after that, he would have to go to his CLE training at night, then go back to Radio Free Asia because he had a meeting with the night shift crew as well. Robert and his wife both decided that in order to spare his sleep and her sleep, that he should just stay over at a friend's house in DC. Originally, Robert asked a female friend, but she was too busy, So he then asked his longtime good friend, Joseph Price. Joseph Price lived in a $1.2 million home in DC with his husband, Victor Zaborsky. Joseph was a lawyer just like Robert, and Victor Zaborsky was the vice president of the Milk Processors Education Program, aka the organization that created the Got Milk ad campaign. The two were also very prominent LGBTQ advocates during the time. Joseph and Victor were in a long-term relationship, doing everything together, including going to Robert's wedding and having a child together with a lesbian couple. Both Joseph and Victor would then add another man to their relationship, who was a children's book writer and a massage therapist named Dylan Ward, forming a three-way polyamorous relationship. All three of them lived in the house on Capitol Hill, but they eventually moved to that $1.2 million home in DC on Swan Street. In that home, they were also renting out their basement to a woman named Sarah. And for the purpose of this video, Sarah isn't really that important. She has multiple alibis. She was not even there. Both Dylan and Victor only knew Robert through Joseph because Joseph and Robert were college friends. Everyone in the house liked Robert, so when Robert asked to stay over, Joe happily accepted. Fast forward 2 weeks to the morning of August 2nd. Robert's wife would help him pack before they would both head to the gym and then head to work. At 9:30 p.m., Robert would call his wife, telling her how the CLE training went and that he would be going to Radio Free Asia. At 9:40 p.m., he arrives at Radio Free Asia and he meets the night crew. Then at 10:24 p.m., Robert would then call Joseph Price that he's heading towards Swan Street. And at this point, we assume around 10:30 is when Robert Wone shows up. And after that, we don't know what happens to him till 11:49, where we get the 911 call from Victor.
DC Emergency 911 operator 6752. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
Immediately. I'm needing an ambulance.
Because there was a 911 call, obviously the police showed up. But the police were not expecting three men that looked, quote, freshly showered, end quote. The police decided to take them in for further investigation, and that's where we get their perspective.
You said tell you what I know. We have an alarm system. The alarm was not on, but it has a function where the doors chime if you open the doors.
So we're watching the Project Runway show, and the phone rings, and it's Robert, and he says that he's on his way. He was talking to Joe. I'm just hearing this half of the conversation. And Joe told him to just ring the doorbell when he got there.
The doorbell rang. We knew that Robert was coming.
Okay.
Joe,
so nobody was answering, so you ran down.
Yeah, so I ran downstairs to let him in. And then Joe, when I opened the door chimes, and I think he must have heard the chime, and then he came downstairs.
Okay.
And then Joe went downstairs, and it turned out that he had come, and Dylan had let him in. And so I stayed upstairs. I was already undressed and ready for bed.
After Robert was there, we had drinks around the, sink. While Dylan and Robert and I were talking around the sink, standing in the kitchen, I was looking out the back doors all glass, and they have these two big glass panels, and I looked out, and there's a light in one of the tree boxes. They're in both. And I could see something like crawling around on top of it. It looked to me like a big bug. Anyway, I walked outside and looked at it and came back in.
Joe went outside for a second because he saw a spider or something on the light. We got, refilled Joe's water and took Robert upstairs, showed him the bed. He said he wanted to shower. We showed him the shower, and that's when I went to bed.
Went upstairs. We showed Robert where the shower was, where the bathroom was, right down the hall. Here's your bed. We'd already made out the pull-out bed for him. We said goodnight. He said he was going to take a shower right then. It was all sticky.
Joe came back upstairs. I'm guessing it was probably like 10 till, something like that, because there's a lot of commercials in this program, and I think we watched 2 commercials. But it was the end of the show. I mean, it was sort of just the climax of the show, so I know he only saw the last few minutes. So then the show was over at 11.
I went upstairs, I saw the last 5 minutes of the show, and then started watching the first 10 minutes of some other thing on Spike TV. And I knew Victor was getting annoyed that I wasn't turning off the TV, so I turned it off and he went to sleep. The next thing that I know, I hear the chime. It's 2 beeps, beep, beep. I don't know how long it was from when I heard the chime. It was not long enough for me to go back to sleep. And I hear what is, it was yelling, but it wasn't, it was just like grunts or something.
I woke up to screams. And Joe and I both jumped up out of bed and ran to the door. And when we got to the door, Joe went out and flicked the light on, and we heard another kind of low scream while we were at our doorway. And we went running downstairs. Joe was right in front of me, and I looked in the room, and Robert was laying on the bed, kind of catty corner.
Victor and I both jump out of bed. We run downstairs. There's, the stairs end at the door. I see the doors open. I see Robert is laying there. The bed cover is pulled back. He's laying there. There is blood on him. His hand was out, one arm was out like this and one arm was like this, I think, or somewhere across his body. And there was a knife. I believe it was laying on him. On his stomach or something like that. I picked up the knife, I moved it, I lifted up his shirt, and I could clearly see there was one, puncture wound right on his belly. I lifted up his shirt a little more. There was a lot of blood on his chest.
And I started screaming. I mean, I was just hysterical.
Victor became very hysterical, and I yelled at him to go call 911. Just go do that.
And Joe just told me to run upstairs. He goes, go back upstairs right now and dial 911. And he went over to Robert, and I went upstairs. And I called 911. And the operator picked up pretty quickly. And I told her that I thought somebody had broken in the house and that I thought somebody was injured. But I didn't at that time know what was happening. So I walked back while I'm on the phone with her to the top of our landing, top of our stairs, and I can see Joe, and Joe saying, get an ambulance here right away, Robert's hurt.
And I just kept saying, where's the ambulance? When's the ambulance getting here? Ask them, tell them we need the ambulance.
So I repeated it and said we needed help right away, and she talked to me for a little bit, and then she told me to apply pressure to the wound. So I grabbed a towel, and I grabbed my robe, and I went downstairs. At some point in this process of me telling Victor to go upstairs and going and holding onto Robert, Dylan came out of his room.
I heard some sort of noise. I didn't know what it was. I thought it might be a scream, but I had just sort of fallen into sleep, and I didn't get up. I thought, oh, maybe the guys are fighting, or maybe it's something in the alley. I wasn't sure, so I didn't get up because it didn't last long. And then I started hearing people running down the stairs, and I heard Victor and Joe yelling, and that's when I finally roused and woke up.
Dylan came out of his room, and he looked like he was putting on his robe. It looked like he had no fucking clue what happened. Didn't hear anything.
And when I was coming down the stairs, Dylan was in the doorway. And as I came, he backed up a bit and let me in. And I gave Joe the towel. I was still on the phone with the operator and was saying, we need help right away.
Eventually the ambulance got there. The guys came up. They got Robert, put him on a stretcher, and the police were right after them, basically. At some point we went downstairs. I think we were told we had to go downstairs.
I stayed downstairs because the police were coming at that point. And the police came in. And then Dylan came down halfway down the stairs, and he said, "Is the back door open?" And I said, "I don't know," because I was just in the living room. And so I walked over to the dining room, and I could see that it was unlocked.
The police came. They asked us to sit on the couch. We sat on the couch. We hardly talked, but I was saying that I was worried that someone had come into the back and must have crawled over the fence.
I remember looking at the night block.
Would you believe somebody came in your house?
Yes.
Through your back door? Well, first of all, over your fence, over your high fence. How high is that? 8 feet? Higher?
Probably 9 foot.
Okay, 9 foot. Wood fence in the back. In through your back door, took a knife out of your butcher's block off the counter in your kitchen, went up to the second floor, and stabbed Robert, and left the knife there, then left.
Even though their stories were consistent among all three of them, the police did not believe them whatsoever. Here's why. The main reason why the police didn't believe anything the men were saying was nothing was stolen.
I think it was probably they were coming in to rob us, and...
Why didn't they take anything then if they were coming in to rob you?
This was a $1.2 million home and nothing was stolen. They had a lot of valuable stuff on the first floor, like a laptop, they had a giant flat screen TV, and nothing was touched. The second weird thing is the fact that the robber decided to break into the home and steal a knife from their kitchen block to stab someone. A huge red flag, because if it was some type of crazy killer / robber, they would have brought their own weapon instead of relying on a weapon of the people in the home.
Why didn't they go to that first bedroom?
And I don't know.
Another reason why the intruder theory didn't make any sense is the fact that the intruder stole that knife and decided to go to the second floor to stab Robert. This doesn't make sense because when you look at the floor plan, Robert's room is on the farther end of the hall, and Dylan's room was the closest one to the staircase. So theoretically, if there was a robber, Dylan should have been stabbed, not Robert. Robert's body was found on top of a fully made bed. I repeat, Robert's body was found on a fully made bed. So the man never even got to sleep inside the bed. The crime scene gets even crazier when I mention the cadaver dogs. The cadaver dogs were trained to detect blood. So whenever there was blood spotted, they would bark. The dogs found blood in 2 sites. One was the lint trap on the second floor, and 2 was a drain outside in their patio. The autopsy was conducted by Dr. Goslinowski, and she noticed that each of the stab wounds were very peculiar. So Robert had 3 stab wounds, one below his sternum, the other on his heart, and the third one that's above his heart and medial to like the body. All 3 of these stab wounds were directly above major organs or major blood vessels.
I told her that he was stabbed on the phone, and she told me to apply pressure to the wound. So I grabbed a towel, and I grabbed my robe, and I went downstairs, and at that point, Joe was already applying pressure to the wound. I gave him another towel.
This is what it looked like. Little to no blood. Robert didn't have any defensive wounds on his body, even though all the stabbings were at major vital sites. The second weird thing about the stab wounds was that each of them were surgical-like. Not a single stab wound was jagged at all. So this would suggest 3 things. 1, Robert was restrained and then stabbed. 2, Robert was put under a drug that made him paralyzed and then stabbed. Or 3, which is something a lot of people don't talk about, Robert was already dead and then stabbed. So the last thing that Dr. Goslinowski noted was the angle of each stab wound. So imagine a clock. Each of the stab wounds were in the same fashion, from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock in that angle, right? But at 4 o'clock, that would be the blunt edge, and at 10 o'clock, that's the sharp edge. So why is that weird? Here's the knife for demonstration. So I'm going to unmirror this section of the video to demonstrate. So sharp part at 10 o'clock, blunt part at 4 o'clock. Bop, right there. Boom. Okay, as you guys can see. Now, that's a very weird way to stab someone. So does this mean that the killer stabbed Robert like this? Not necessarily. You can still stab someone the normal way, but the only way you can do that is if you stab them from behind, like this. And this is actually like a way easier to stab at that angle. Like I didn't really have to think that much. And boom, we have the 10 o'clock to the 4 o'clock. So it means that the killer could have stabbed Robert upside down, or the killer could have stabbed Robert from behind. Moving on to the next thing that Dr. Goslinowski noted, specifically the needle puncture markings all over Robert's body. Additionally, additional needle puncture marks are noted at the left side of the neck, at the left antecubital fossa. Needle puncture marks are also present at the central lower chest. We have one at the front of his right ankle, on the back of the hand, and on the front of the right knee. Alongside the needle puncture marks, Dr. Goslinowski noted that Robert had petechial hemorrhages on his eyes, suggesting asphyxia or suffocation of some kind. In the autopsy examination, Dr. Goslinowski noted that Robert still had his mouth guard that he would put on before he went to sleep. Dr. Goslinowski also found semen on Robert's body, specifically on his genitals, inside his rectum, and his anus, suggesting Robert was sexually assaulted. You would think that finding semen on Robert's body would help the investigation even more, but it actually made things more complicated. When Dr. Goslinowski went to see whose DNA was on Robert's body, it was none of the three men, but it was Robert's own semen. For those who are wondering about the needle puncture markings and suspecting that it was some kind of drug, Dr. Goslinowski did a routine screening to see all the possible drugs, like date rape drugs, barbiturates, opioids, everything you can think of. And literally everything was negative. Dr. Goslinowski noted that she couldn't test for even more drugs because roughly 2/3 of Robert's blood was gone, so she only had 1/3 of his blood to work with. The other notable things that Dr. Goslinowski noted within the autopsy report was there wasn't really a lot of urine in Robert's bladder, suggesting that he recently, used the bathroom. And also, there wasn't any solid foods within his stomach, but there was blood found in his duodenum. And Dr. Goslinowski concluded that Robert was still alive even after the stabbing, and he was digesting his blood, resulting in the blood found inside his intestines. Because of the nature of the case, the investigation continued for 2 years, having the FBI also be involved in solving Robert's murder. June 2008, the three men would move away from Swan Street and sell their home for roughly $1.5 million and would move to Florida. On October 27, 2008, the police got an arrest warrant for Dylan Ward. And 2 days later, on October 29, 2008, Dylan was arrested in Florida. On October 31st, 2008, the affidavit for the arrest of Dylan Ward was made public. It described in great detail everything the police and the FBI found within the home and all the inconsistencies they noticed. One of the first things that the affidavit addressed was the intruder theory. All three of the men believed that a robber or a murderer broke in and stabbed Robert. They demonstrated in great detail how this was improbable because the men claimed that the intruder came from their backyard. But it's noted that they had a 7-foot tall fence that the intruder would have had to jump in order to get in. Say hypothetically someone did figure a way to jump the fence. The police noted that there was many cobwebs all over the scene and none of them were broken, indicating that nobody went through. Also, all the dirt found in the backyard was undisturbed. Another indication that no one jumped the fence. As you guys know, the door chimes whenever someone comes in or out of the house. This conflicts with the intruder theory because if the door chimes immediately as someone opens the door, the intruder would have most likely ran out the house immediately because from the intruder perspective, the house that they're trying to rob now knows someone came in. Another odd thing noted in the affidavit was the staircase. The men had very creaky stairs. It was so creaky that police stated that even from the 3rd floor, they could hear people walk up the steps, which is very interesting because none of the men mentioned hearing anyone going up or down the steps. As I mentioned previously, with the robber-murderer theory, Dylan should have been the one to be stabbed and not Robert. And also, nothing was stolen in the home, which was a big red flag. And Robert had 2 wallets and an expensive watch inside the guest room, and those were also not stolen. When talking about the knife in question found in the crime scene, forensic found something very alarming. The EMS workers Tracy Weaver and Jeff Baker noted that Robert was wearing a gray t-shirt and orange nylon shorts, which confirmed by Robert's wife was his sleeping attire. This is important to note because forensics was expecting to find the gray fibers from the shirt to be on the knife. But no fibers were found. Specifically, no gray fibers were found. They did find fibers, but they were white. And those white fibers were consistent with the fibers of the towel used to apply pressure on Robert's wounds, indicating that someone went downstairs, grabbed the kitchen knife, went back upstairs, and slid the knife through the towel in order to plant a knife. They also noted that the smear was about 5.5 inches long. This was really weird because Dr. Goslanowski noted that each of the stab wounds were about 4 to 5 inches deep. So the smear on the knife shouldn't have been 5.5 inches long. The affidavit had a lot of details about Dylan in his room. Remember the cadaver dogs I mentioned earlier? Well, they found
MDMA, better known as ecstasy, Molly, or one of a number of other street names,
in Dylan's room. And Dr. Goslanowski did check and it was negative. They also found a cutlery set that was missing a knife that was 4.5 inches long, which would match Dr. Goslanowski's description of each of the stab wounds. Later in the court trial, Dylan's mom would testify and say that she sent Dylan the cutlery set, but she kept that missing knife. But she never actually showed that knife, leading many to believe that she lied on the behalf of her son. Another thing noted in the affidavit was the amount of BDSM toys found in Dylan's room. One of the BDSM toys was dubbed a milking machine, which used electric shock in order to force an ejaculation onto someone. They also found a lot of BDSM books related to pain and pleasure in Dylan's room. The investigators also copied their computer and they found even more BDSM images and content. There was even a lot of BDSM images of Dylan and Joseph together, where Dylan was the dom and Joseph was the sub. Later on, they also found JosephAlt.com account, and it showed a lot of his BDSM interest, which Dylan was most likely fulfilling because he also clearly enjoyed the same things. Another important detail stated in the affidavit was the delayed 911 call. The 911 call was received at 11:49 p.m. But one of the neighbors stated that they heard a scream from between 11 o'clock to 11:30, and we assume that it's between this window because he stated that his wife was watching her favorite news anchor and her broadcasting was confirmed to be between 11 o'clock to 11:30. The affidavit also mentioned all the weird things noted in the interrogation. Like, for one, Joseph was very inconsistent. First, he said that he found the knife laying on Robert's body. Then he altered his story and stated that he might have actually pulled the knife from Robert's body instead. Another thing Joseph mentioned was that since he was the one who moved the knife, his fingerprints would have been on the knife. But the odd thing is, Joseph also mentioned that the police was probably not going to find the killer's fingerprints because the killer most likely was wearing gloves, which was very odd to mention, especially when your friend just died. During the interrogation, police suspected that Dylan was most likely the killer, and they even put him on a lie detector test, and he failed. On November 29th, Victor, Dylan, and Joseph were all indicted for obstruction of justice. And on November 25th, Robert's wife would file a $20 million lawsuit against the three men because of everything stated on the affidavit.
Problem is this for your case? It's a major problem, and the government will say it's a major problem for them, but it's more of a problem for us because it's critical in any homicide case when the time of death is. The government maintains that the time of death, early on in this case, that said the time of death was earlier in this case, and in fact, they maintain that the victim was suffocated, tortured, and abused for at least an hour, perhaps more. We now find out 5 days ago, after 2.5 years of investigation, that the government was in possession of a BlackBerry that showed two emails going out, one at 11:05, one at 11:07. I guess the jury's out, so to speak, on whether those emails went out. But we just found out about this 5 days ago. We could be in a position of no harm, no foul if they had the BlackBerry and we could recreate everything. But it was sent to the Secret Service to be imaged, and it was never imaged. Then it was returned to Mr. Wone's wife. She then returned it to his employer, and now it's gone.
And what do you call the fact that it was never imaged? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Probably words that your viewers don't want to hear.
Yeah. So not helpful.
Not helpful is a good start.
May 10th, 2010 will be the court trial of the three men for obstruction of justice, tampering of evidence, and conspiracy. June 29th, 2010. The judge concluded all three of the men to be not guilty. The judge even stated that she did not believe the men were innocent, but they were not guilty to the crimes that they were charged with because the prosecutors couldn't substantially prove how and why the men did the things they did. Similar to how I'm telling you guys all the evidence, the autopsy, the affidavit, all the weird stuff, and showing you the interrogation videos. This is just reporting. Like, essentially, I'm just showing you, oh, look at all these weird things. And that's what the prosecutors were also doing. They were just showing all the weird things. And they did state that Dylan was most likely the killer, and it was most likely a sexual assault situation, but they couldn't tie everything together and make sense of everything to substantially convince the judge. With a $20 million lawsuit against them, it was eventually settled on August 3rd, 2011 by Robert's wife for an undisclosed amount. And this honestly makes sense because the men during the trial just kept pleading the fifth and weren't giving any information at all. To this day, the men were not charged with all the things mentioned before and Robert's murder. And to this day, people are still trying to figure out his murder. And there was even a Peacock documentary about it just last year. Many believe that this case will remain a cold case unless one of the three men confess.
I mean, and that's where it's at. I mean, it's still unsolved. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think it's probably going to stay that way unless somebody does decide, you know what, I need to come clean. I can't have this on my conscience anymore, and I need to just tell the truth.
It's clear that somewhere there's a person who knows what happened in this case, but I doubt this case will ever be solved.
Oh, that Judge Leibovitz found them not guilty, so they can't be retried on those same things. Theoretically, they could be tried someday for murder, but I just feel like there's not enough evidence there because the guys have all stuck to their same story.
Even though this is a very popular sentiment, I personally disagree. The main issue with this cold case is the timeline. 79 minutes in order for the killer to sexually assault Robert, then stab him, then allegedly drain his body, then wash his body, then redress him, then put him on the bed. And if you believe that Robert was stabbed out on the patio, then you have to account for them going up and down the stairs. And if you believe that they washed their clothes outside and like they dried their clothes, you have to account for them drying their clothes. Because when the EMS workers came in, they never mentioned hearing the laundry running at all. So it's a lot of things that they would have had to do within 79 minutes, which is highly improbable.
Will soon be off the air. Some were angry about that, some were concerned.
The neighbor heard a scream, and he assumed that he heard the scream between 11 and 11:30 because his wife was watching Maureen Bunyan. But the neighbor himself was not actually watching the show. His wife was. So he wasn't looking at the TV when he heard the scream. This is important because his wife also admitted that she left the TV running past 11:30. Why is this important? Well, there was another program called Nightline where there was another news anchor named Vicky Mabry. Vicky Mabry segment on Nightline would start at 11:45. This is important because since the neighbor was in a different room, he could have mistaken Vicky's voice for Maureen's voice instead. We have Joseph, who I dubbed as a liar of fabrication.
So Victor and I both jump out of bed. We run downstairs. It's a strange thing. I got up. Victor got up. You know, when we went right downstairs. We didn't like fly down the stairs. But
the reason when he told you 11:43, and then the person on the other end of the phone would have heard that. And if that person heard that, you would think that person
didn't tell me the time at that moment.
What time is it? What time is it at the moment? 23:54. It's 11:54. 54.
Then we have Dylan, who I dubbed a liar of omission.
From that Rob was sleeping there, right?
Oh yeah, my room is right, you know, at the top of the stairs.
Well, how many feet?
4 feet, maybe 2 feet.
And how many feet is it from your room? I mean, from the top of the stairs to the room that Rob was at?
Maybe 16 feet, something like that.
So is this burglary? You say it wasn't there.
Yeah, I know. I thought of that. I'm like, why didn't they open my door first?
Right.
I have no idea.
And then we have Victor, who I genuinely believe is telling the truth the whole time. Victor, who took an early flight back home. He was on a work trip. When he came home, he didn't even know Robert was supposed to be there. Victor never even saw Robert once when he was alive. He only saw Robert when he was dead. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that Reap What You Sow was the Project Runway title on August 2nd, 2006. Basically, I first found that episode, then I watched the whole thing. Project Runway ran from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, so that's 17 minutes of ads. So then I took that 17 minutes and divided it evenly by each ad break, and I created what I call the Project Runway timeline. And the only person that passed this timeline was Victor. Victor said that he heard a chime when he screamed, and Joseph said he heard a chime, which woke him up, and then heard the grunts, and then everything, happened. So this means this accounts for both of the beeping sound of someone going in and out, or somebody going out and back in. Victor never heard the creaking of someone going up and down the stairs. We know that Victor did take a sleeping pill and he was knocked. He didn't wake up to the chime like Joseph did, indicating that Victor is a heavy sleeper and Joseph is not. So the person most likely to hear creaking would have been Joseph. So why didn't Victor hear someone go back upstairs? Well, he was calling the cops. So the only person that would hear someone slowly go up the staircase would have also been Joseph. The needle puncture markings were most likely all IVs by the EMS workers and doctors at the hospital. Another reason why it's important to take note of medical interventions is the 2/3 of missing blood. If you look at the autopsy, you can see that Robert had 2 chest tubes, meaning that he had a hemothorax. Robert's blood was definitely drained, but it was by medical professionals, not the killer. Robert had a lot of internal bleeding, resulting in the lack of blood seen within the crime scene. Robert was stabbed in the guest room. And if you didn't come to this conclusion, I'll show you why. As I mentioned with the medical intervention and the hemothorax, Robert was not drained. With the affidavit, we know that they found blood in 3 places, not 2 places. The dryer, the patio, and the guest room.
No drugs, no booze, nothing. Robert was like the, best, absolutely straight A, no nonsense guy.
Ketamine.
He is a very popular date rape drug and a very popular party drug in the gay scene. And has a very fast onset, especially when you don't eat anything. In the autopsy report, we know that there was no solid foods present. When you're using it recreationally, you're supposed to use it in small doses. I strongly believe that Robert was ODing, resulting in him being unconscious, which is a symptom alongside low blood pressure. I don't believe that it was a paralytic drug like succinylcholine, because that drug can render a person paralyzed very, very quickly. But the issue is how it works is that you can't use any of your muscles. This is including your diaphragm. Your diaphragm is a huge muscle that you need in order to breathe. Meaning, Robert would have been dead pretty much immediately, and the cause of death would have been asphyxia. But Dr. Goslinowski didn't conclude that. The killer had the knife with him the whole time and not after committing the assault. Because if Robert was unconscious and the killer went to Dylan's room and went back to the guest room, they would have simply stabbed Robert from whatever position he was laying instead of going behind Robert and then stabbing him.
And seen him, so I probably did say he was stabbed.
Did you see the knife?
I'm confused now because I think I saw the knife the first time I came down the steps, but I really looked so quickly and was hysterical that I don't know whether I did or not. I thought I saw a black handle, and I thought I saw it. See, when I was telling one of the other detectives, I remember I thought I saw one hand on his stomach, and then I remember he had his one hand was like weird because it was like standing up and sort of twisted, and so I thought I saw the handle of the knife resting against him. But when I first told the police officers or told the detectives here, I told them that he was holding his stomach. So I don't really know. I know he wasn't holding his stomach with both hands because I vividly remember now.
And like I said, I really don't know. I think I said the knife was laying on him. One of the officers, actually, I think one of the guys last night or whatever said, was it in him? I don't know. I mean, it was very surreal.
The police didn't search their car till way later.
I think it would be a challenge to get over the fence. I mean, it seems to me it's high. Our car's parked right there, so, and it's very close to the gate. So this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I've never been mugged. My house was never broken into. My car was broken into. We're looking at the night block. I recognize.
Do you remember ever locking the door?
I don't. No.
Do you guys normally lock it?
Yeah, we normally lock it, but it has happened once. You come down and kind of give everybody shit about, oh, the door was unlocked last night.
Everybody mentioned Kathy had surgery.
His wife just had both of her hips replaced. She's like a degenerative joint disease, and to be around at their house for she was basically laid up for a couple of months. We brought a bunch of
Okay. The most recent time we saw them was Kathy had hip surgery. It wasn't knee, it was hip surgery. And anyway, she had surgery.
The killer may had an Asian fetish. There are stereotypes against the Asian Americans where they are seen as more submissive, which would have played into the dom submissive fetish that the killer had.
Robert came in, I offered him a glass of water. Nobody drank any wine? We had wine at dinner. Robert did not have any wine. He came, we had already cleaned up. What else happened? Nothing. We talked about his wife. His wife had had hip surgery a few months ago, and we went to visit her, and I just asked how she was doing. And then we talked about our friend Lisa, we talked briefly about his job. Joe talked about the shower break-in. Joe went outside for a second because he saw a spider or something on the light. We got, refilled Joe's water and took Robert upstairs, showed him the bed. He said he wanted to shower, we showed him the shower, and that's when I went to bed.
The killer knocked on the door as Robert was drafting those emails, and he opened the door. And since the killer was someone Robert knew, he didn't really bat an eye. He was probably like, oh, hey, what's up? The killer went inside, closed the door, and was up front and said, let's have sex. I know you and your wife aren't having sex because of her surgery, so why don't you just have sex with me? And Robert, being a straight man, most likely declined. And at this point, the killer would pull out the knife. Robert would have most likely been scared. Once the killer noticed that Robert was under the influence, he would have coerced Robert onto the bed and manually masturbated him from behind. And he eventually would ejaculate. The killer probably fingered Robert, and since the semen would have been on the killer's hand, that's how Robert's own semen would have ended up in his rectum and on his anus. I think shortly after this, Roberts falls over downwards, and most likely the killer had the knife right next to him on the bed. And in the killer's mind, there's two options: call the police to save Robert, but then they would have went to jail immediately and would have been charged for rape, or he could stab Robert in order to protect himself. So with Robert's body facing forward downwards like this, he most likely lifted Robert's body and grabbed the knife and did those 3 stab wounds. And remember, Robert's unconscious at this point. Pulled Robert's legs forward. They left the room with the door open and went downstairs to the patio, and that's where Joseph heard the beep. When he went outside to hose himself and the knife, he went to their car and hid the knife there, then go back inside, which would account for Victor's account of hearing the chime. And the killer probably heard them screaming and yelling upon seeing the body. Then they would have grabbed the kitchen knife and probably put the kitchen knife inside their pocket, because I'm assuming that they're wearing a robe, and walked back upstairs slowly to the guest room and found Joseph, and Joseph would have immediately known who the killer was. And the killer gave Joseph the kitchen knife, where he grabbed the towel and swiped it in order to plant the knife.
Okay, can you just go ahead and tell me what you remember about what happened tonight?
Well, it was, I had just gotten back from a business trip. I was in Denver and got home around 6:30. When I got home, Dylan was home. He was exercising in his room, and he had told me that Joe was at the gym. So I changed clothes, unpacked a bit, and then went to the gym. I got home probably only about 35 minutes later. It wasn't long. So probably 7:15, 7:20. Went upstairs, took a shower. Joe was already home from the gym. And Dylan was in the shower when I got home. And then I went upstairs, changed. We were having trouble with our shower in our master bedroom, so Joe was trying to rig a hose to see if he could make it leak again into the drain. And I went downstairs. Dylan had already started cooking dinner. I helped. We were having steak, so we were in and out the back door. And while we were cooking dinner, I talked to a friend of mine who lives in Silver Spring, and steaks were burning, so we went out there, got off the phone. We had dinner. At dinner, we were talking about how we wanted to watch a show called Project Runway. We finished dinner. It was probably like 9:15 or so, because we finished cleaning the kitchen. Just as we were finishing dinner, Joe remembered he had left the water running, and so he went up, and evidently it was dripping again, so he had to clean up the leak. Dylan and I went upstairs. Dylan went in his room. I went upstairs the rest of the way, talked to Joe, and that's when I went and watered the plants. I watered the ones on the roof first, and then I went downstairs all the way down to the main level and went out front and watered the front flowers. I came back in and went right upstairs. Actually, it was probably when I was coming up the stairs after watering the plants out front is when I saw Dylan making the bed in the office. And I asked him what he was doing because I didn't know we were having anyone come over. And he said that Robert was coming over, that he was working late and wanted to just crash at our place rather than going home. And then I talked to Joe and I asked Joe and he said yes, that's what it was. Robert was coming over and that they were going to have breakfast in the morning. So at that point is when I finished going upstairs and started watching TV. By that time, it was probably like 10:15 or 10 till 10, something like that. And so I went upstairs, started turning the television on and flipping channels, getting ready for bed. And I couldn't find the station. Joe came up because he was still working with the drain. And told me what station it was on. We clicked over to it, and we found out we didn't have that station any longer because he had canceled part of the cable. So he went downstairs at that point, and I just was flipping channels, watching some other shows. And then he came up probably about 10 or 15 minutes later and said, try it again. So we went, and the show was on. So we're watching the Project Runway show, and the phone rings, and it's Robert, and he says that he's on his way. He was talking to Joe. I'm just hearing this half of the conversation. And Joe told him to just ring the doorbell when he got there. So he hung up. The call was only like a minute. I mean, it was a very short call. And Joe and I were watching TV then for a few minutes, and then Joe went downstairs, and it turned out that he had come, and Dylan had let him in. And so I stayed upstairs. I was already undressed and ready for bed. Probably about 15 or 20 minutes later at the most, absolute most, Joe came back upstairs. I'm guessing it was probably like 10 till, something like that, because there's a lot of commercials in this program, and I think we watched 2 commercials. But it was the end of the show. I mean, it was sort of just the climax of the show, so I know he only saw the last few minutes. So then the show was over at 11. 11, we were still watching the same channel, and I got up and brushed my teeth, came back to bed, and Joe was switching channels, looking what was on, and he saw a show he wanted to see, and he was going to start watching it. We turned the lights out. When I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth, I took a Sudafed and Unisom, because I just got back from the trip and I was having postnasal drip, and I've been having trouble sleeping anyway because of work, been a lot of pressure, and then taking a Sudafed, which sometimes keep me up. I thought I should take something. So I took that. Now it's probably only like 5 minutes after 11, 7 minutes after 11. It's pretty early still, and I just rolled over and went to bed. The lights were out. Joe still had the TV on, and like about 2 minutes later, he turned the TV off and went to bed himself. And then I woke up to screams, and Joe and I both jumped up out of bed and ran to the door. And when we got to the door, Joe went out and flipped the light on, and we heard another kind of low scream while we were at our doorway. And we went running downstairs. Joe was right in front of me, and I looked in the room, and Robert was laying on the bed, kind of catty corner, and I started screaming. I mean, I was just hysterical. And Joe just told me to run upstairs. He goes, go back upstairs right now, dial 911. And he went over to Robert, and I went upstairs. And I called 911, and the operator picked up pretty quickly.
DC Emergency 911 Operator 6752. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
And I told her that that I thought somebody had broken in the house and that I thought somebody was injured, but I didn't at that time know what was happening.
Immediately, we need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
We had someone that was in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house now?
I don't know, we heard...
Are they bleeding? You see someone bleeding?
Someone is bleeding in our house.
Okay, where's they bleeding from?
I think in the stomach.
In the stomach? Is he cautious? Calm down for me. I'm going to send some help, okay? Female or male?
It's a male. He's a friend of ours. He was spending the night with us.
Okay, and who was the person that stabbed him? Do you know? Is he cautious?
So I walked back while I'm on the phone with her to the top of our landing, top of our stairs, and I can see Joe, and Joe saying, "Get an ambulance here right away. Robert's hurt." So I repeated it and said we needed help right away.
We need an ambulance.
Ma'am, listen to me.
He's not conscious.
He's not conscious at all?
No. We need someone right now.
Is he breathing? Listen to me. Calm down. I'm going to help you, okay? Is he breathing?
I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs. I don't know.
Okay, who's downstairs with him?
My partner is downstairs with him right now. He told me to go upstairs and call the police immediately. I just went to the stairs.
Okay, who's the person? Okay, I'm sending paramedics and the police. Okay, who's the person that stabbed him?
I don't know. We think it's somebody with an intruder in the house. We heard the chime at the door.
And it's 15, ma'am, calm down. 1509 Swan Street, Northwest. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
The person that stabbed him, is he still in the home?
I don't know.
Joe had said he was stabbed, and so
Joe said he was stabbed?
Yes. Because when I was at the stairs, because I told her that he was stabbed on the phone, and she told me to apply pressure to the wound. So I grabbed a towel, and I grabbed my robe, and I went downstairs.
Okay, we got help en route, okay?
Pardon me?
We have help en route.
Thank you. They're here.
They are en route to you now. I'm sending the police and the paramedics, okay, to assist. Okay, what I need you to do is go downstairs, okay? The place wherever he was stabbed at, I need you to get a dry cloth, okay? And just apply pressure to that area. If he was wherever he was stabbed at on his body, I need you to take a towel downstairs while you're waiting for the paramedics to arrive and just apply pressure. Even if the rag or towel is saturated with blood, just get another towel and put it on top, but never lift the first towel off the area.
When I was coming down the stairs, Dylan was in the doorway. And as I came, he'd backed up a bit. Then let me in.
And what was he doing?
He was just standing there.
What was he dressed like?
He was in his robe.
Okay.
Joe was already applying pressure to the wound. I gave him another towel.
Hold it on. Once it gets filled up with blood, just put another towel on top of that and just apply pressure until the paramedics arrive.
Pressure until the
yes.
On the leg.
Yeah.
We're stabbed in the heart.
In the heart?
Yes. In the center of his chest.
Okay, is he breathing?
Is he breathing?
We have help en route now, okay? You don't know who it was?
I have no idea. So don't touch this. Like that.
Okay, is he breathing?
He's breathing, but he needs help now.
Okay, we have help en route, ma'am, okay? We do have help en route. Okay, just go down there and try to tell your husband or your the other half to just try to keep him calm and talk to him, okay? Keep him calm and talk to him until someone gets there. Okay. And at the same time, get a dry cloth and just hold it right there in the area.
My partner's holding the...
Okay.
Holding it on him.
Okay, and once it gets saturated with blood, tell him get another one. Go get another towel so you can apply it on top of that one once it gets filled up with blood. Okay, we need you to apply pressure on that area.
He is applying pressure right now.
Okay, just hold it there until the paramedics get there. They should be pulling up any moment if they're already en route to your location. You don't know who did this.
We have no idea who did this.
Is the door open so they can get in?
We don't know how they got in.
Okay, well, I'm asking you now, is the door open so the paramedics can get in once they get here?
What? Sorry. What were you saying?
Is the door open so they can get in? Is the door open so the paramedics can get in the home?
I'm going to go down.
Is this a private home or apartment?
It's a home.
It's a home. It's 1509 Swan Street, Northwest.
The person had one of our knives.
The person that stabbed him ran out the door with a knife?
I think so.
Okay, anybody get any type of description of the person that came in the home?
We have no idea. We have no description. We heard the chime, and we heard the scream from our friend.
Okay.
And so we came running downstairs. We ran in.
So you both was upstairs and your friend was downstairs?
Yes.
You heard the door open and then you heard the scream?
I didn't hear the door open until after the scream, and then we ran down the stairs and we heard we have an alarm, and so the chime went off.
Okay.
Now, I was still on the phone with the operator and was saying, we need help right away.
The ambulance, please, we really need the ambulance.
Okay, they en route now, ma'am. Go to the door. They should be pulling up any moment, okay?
And she said that earlier, and then again, she said I had to go to the door to let the ambulance and the police in. And I said I didn't know if anyone was still in the house.
I'm afraid to go downstairs.
Okay, the person who's downstairs was the person that was assaulted.
No, we're on the second floor.
Okay, so somebody need to go downstairs and open the door for the paramedics. You're not sure if that person's still in the home or not.
I have no idea.
Joe was like, what time is it? It's taking so long. And I asked the operator what time it was, and she said it was 11:43.
Okay, we have paramedics en route, okay?
What time is it?
What time is it at the moment?
Yes.
23:54. It's 11:54, ma'am.
11:54.
Yes.
I mean,
I'll stay on the line with you. I will stay on the line until somebody gets here, okay? I won't hang up.
We need them right now. I'm not hanging up, but we need help now.
Okay, they en route, ma'am. They are en route.
So I went to the window and opened up the shutters because they were completely closed, and I looked down. I couldn't see anything or anybody.
Let me know when you hear the paramedics. Can you look out the window and see if you hear them coming?
I'm looking out the window and I see nothing. I see nobody.
Okay, it seems like forever, but they are en route, ma'am. They're coming.
I was talking to her and saying we need help now, and then she said they're on their way. They'll be there any minute. And then I saw the ambulance pull up. And then I looked down the street and I saw a fire engine, and I went downstairs, and opened the door and let them in.
Here they are.
They're there?
I'm going downstairs.
Okay. I'll stay on the line with you till you open the door for the paramedics, okay?
Help us. We have someone was stabbed. They're on our second floor.
Ma'am?
No, it's really an emergency. I mean, please hurry.
Ma'am, it's gonna be okay.